The sun beat down on the dusty fairgrounds, turning the air wavy with heat. It was the day of the big county auction, a noisy, bustling event where farmers bought and sold everything from tractors to baby chicks. The air smelled of popcorn, animals, and gasoline from the old trucks parked in rows. People laughed and called out to neighbors. A lively Saturday scene in a small, rusty wire pen near the back. Away from the shiny equipment sat an old dog. His name was Benny. He was a terrier mix, mostly white, but with patches of brown that looked like he'd been dipped in weak tea. His muzzle was completely gray, and his eyes, the color of dark honey, held a calm tiredness. He didn't whine or bark like the younger dogs sometimes did. He just sat, watching the commotion with a quiet confusion. Benny had known only one home his whole 12 years, the Miller family farm just 3 miles down the road. He remembered the cool feel of the barn's dirt floor, the smell of hay, and the sound of Mr. Miller's low whistle calling him for supper. He had herded chickens, not very well, napped in sunny patches in the vegetable garden, and been a gentle, quiet presence through all the farm's changes. But life changes. The Millers, getting older, found the farm work too much. They sold the land and bought a small apartment in the city. Their hearts were heavy when they thought of Benny. The apartment had a strict no-pets rule, and even if it didn't, taking an old farm dog used to running free and put him in a tiny box in the sky didn't seem fair. They thought, with hope in their hearts, that someone at the auction might want a good, experienced dog. They gave him a bath, brushed his coat until it shone, and with tears in their eyes, led him to the pen that morning. Now, Benny waited. The auction moved quickly. A young border collie, fast and smart, sold for $50 to a sheep farmer. People clapped. Then it was Benny's turn. The auctioneer, a man with a fast, musical way of talking, helped Mr. Miller lead Benny onto a small wooden platform. "Next up, folks, we got a genuine farm dog," the auctioneer called out. "This here's Benny, 12 years young, knows the land, quiet, no trouble at all. A perfect companion. Who'll start the bidding for this good old boy?" The crowd looked. They saw the gray on his face. They saw how he moved slowly, not with the bounce of a puppy. A few people shifted on their feet, but no one spoke. The cheerful noise of the crowd seemed to quiet for a moment. The auctioneer tried again, his voice a little less musical. "Come on now. He's got years of love left. Do I hear $10? 5? Still silence. Benny just stood there, his tail tucked slightly between his legs. He could feel the eyes on him. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the feeling of being looked over, of being passed by. It was a lonely feeling in the middle of a crowd. Mr. Miller's face fell. He patted Benny's head, his throat tight. Finally, from the edge of the crowd, a voice spoke. It was a neighboring farmer, a man who knew the Millers. He felt a pang of pity for his old friend and the dog. He didn't really need another dog, but he couldn't let the moment end with nothing. "I'll give $1, the man said, his voice not loud but clear in the quiet. A ripple went through the crowd. $1 for a living soul. It was less than the price of a fairground hamburger. The auctioneer glanced at Mr. Miller, who gave a small, sad nod. Anything was better than nothing. Sold. For $1 to the man in the green cap. The gavel banged, a sharp, final sound, and just like that, Benny's life changed. The rope leash was handed from Mr. Miller to the neighbor. As Mr. Miller walked away, unable to look back, Benny strained for a second, a small whine in his throat. But the new owner gave a gentle tug. With his head low, Benny stepped off the platform. He was led past the pens of animals, his nails clicking softly on the hard ground. He was no longer the Miller's dog. He was a $1 dog, a spurned creature bought out of pity, his whole history and loyalty worth less than a cold drink on a hot day. He didn't know where he was going, only that the hands holding his rope were not the hands he knew. The happy sounds of the fair seemed to blur into a distant hum as he walked away, a picture of quiet defeat. The little girl hadn't meant to see it happen. She was just there for the fun of the fair. The sticky cotton candy, the bright lights of the game booths, the giant stuffed animals that seemed to glow in the afternoon sun, that was what she had come for. She held her father's large, calloused hand tightly as they moved through the crowd, a small island of calm in the busy sea of people. Her name was Lily, and she was 8 years old. She had soft brown hair that was always escaping from her braids and eyes the color of a summer sky. She was a quiet child, the kind who watched and thought a lot more than she spoke. Her father, a kind man who worked with machines, had promised her a day out, just the two of them. They were walking past the auction area on their way to the Ferris wheel when the sound of the auctioneer's voice made Lily pause. It wasn't the fast, funny chant that caught her attention. It was the sudden drop in it. The music seemed to go out of his words. Curious, she pulled her father's hand, and they found a spot on the lower wooden bleachers. Sitting down on the sun-warmed planks, she saw the old dog being led onto the platform. She saw him stand still, his body looking a little stiff, while the man talked and talked. Lily didn't listen to the numbers. She watched the dog's face. She saw the way his ears were not perked up, but soft and relaxed against his head. She saw the gentle sag around his eyes. He wasn't excited or scared. He just seemed patient and terribly, deeply tired. Then came the silence. It was a different kind of quiet from the quiet in her room at night. This was a heavy quiet, full of people looking away, shuffling their feet, studying the ground. Lily felt her own heart squeeze in her chest. Why wasn't anyone saying anything? He was right there. He was a good dog, she could just tell. She had never had a dog of her own, but she knew. You could see it in the calm way he stood. When the man from the edge of the crowd said, $1, Lily's breath caught. Her father, sitting beside her, let out a soft sigh and shook his head slowly. He understood what was happening. It was just the way of things sometimes. But Lily did not understand. $1? You could get a toy from a gumball machine for $1. You could get a scoop of ice cream. You couldn't get a life for $1. The bang of the gavel made her jump. It was so loud and final. She watched as the old man who had owned the dog gave the rope to another man. She saw the old man walk away quickly, his shoulders hunched. And then she saw the dog. As he was led off the platform and started walking through the dust, his whole body seemed to tell a story she could read perfectly. His tail was not wagging. It was tucked close, not in fear, but in a sort of sad acceptance. His head was lowered, not sniffing the ground, just hanging down as if it had become too heavy to hold up. He walked slowly, each step deliberate, as if he was moving away from everything he had ever known and into a world that didn't want him. The crowd's noise came back. People laughed about something else. The auctioneer started calling out numbers for a rusty old tractor. The moment was over for everyone, but not for Lily, as the dog and the new owner passed right in front of the bleachers. Lily's eyes locked with the dog's. For just a second, the dog looked up. His honey-colored eyes met her blue ones. In them, she didn't see anger or meanness. She saw a question. She saw a loneliness so big it felt like a hollow space right in the middle of the noisy, cheerful fair. A feeling washed over Lily, a feeling stronger than any she had felt before. It wasn't just sadness. It was a fierce, burning sense that this was wrong. It was as plain and clear to her as the sun in the sky. Something precious was being thrown away, and everyone was just letting it happen. She tugged on her father's hand, hard. He looked down at her, surprised by the force of the pull. "Dad," she said, her voice small but serious. "Yes, sweetheart? Why does he look so lonely?" Her father paused. He was a practical man. He thought about how to explain the hard facts of life to an 8-year-old. He chose his words carefully. "Well, honey," he said, keeping his voice gentle, "he's an old dog. He's had a long life on the farm. Sometimes when things get old, people think they're not useful anymore. They look for new things, younger things. It's just what happens." Lily listened, but her eyes never left the dog's back as he grew smaller in the distance. Her father's explanation didn't settle in her heart. It just bumped against this new, solid feeling of wrongness inside her. It didn't make sense. Her grandmother was old, and she was the most useful person Lily knew. She told the best stories and gave the warmest hugs. Old didn't mean over. She turned and looked right up at her father, her face set in a way he hadn't seen before. It wasn't a frown. It was a look of pure, simple conviction. "That's not right," she said, and with those 3 quiet words, spoken with the unshakable truth only a child can possess, the story of the $1 dog was no longer over. It had just found its most important character. The rest of the fair, the lights, the music, the promise of the Ferris wheel, all of it faded away for Lily. All she could think about was the old dog's eyes and the heavy weight of that lonely walk through the dust. The rest of the fair was a blur of colors and sounds that meant nothing to Lily. She rode the Ferris wheel in silence, looking out not at the pretty view of the town, but back toward the now empty auction pens. She ate her cotton candy without tasting the sweet melt of it on her tongue. Her father tried to point out funny things and interesting games, but her usual bright curiosity was gone, replaced by a quiet, thoughtful focus. She couldn't forget the dog's eyes. They floated in her mind, those patient, sad, honey-colored eyes. And that number, $1. It echoed. It felt like a price tag on a soul, and the thought made her feel a little sick. That night, in her cozy room with its yellow walls and shelves of stuffed animals, sleep wouldn't come. The moonlight made soft shapes on the floor. She could hear the low murmur of the television from the living room where her parents were talking. She sat up in bed, hugging her knees. A plan began to form in her mind. It wasn't a wild, childish daydream. It was a clear, step-by-step idea, built on that strong feeling of wrongness she had felt. It started with a memory. Her glittery pink piggy bank, shaped like a castle, sat on her dresser. It wasn't just for saving. It was for wishing. Every coin inside was a hope for a new book, for a special toy, for ice cream on a hot day. Quietly, she slipped out of bed. The floor was cool under her feet. She took the piggy bank. It was heavier than she remembered. Sitting cross-legged in the patch of moonlight, she worked the rubber stopper free from its belly. With a soft clatter, a river of coins poured out onto her rug-shiny quarters. Dollar dimes, little copper pennies, and even a few wrinkled dollar bills folded small dot with great seriousness. She began to sort them. She stacked the quarters into little towers. She lined up the dimes. She made a pile of nickels and a big, messy heap of pennies. The dollar bills she smoothed out carefully. Her tongue poked out from the corner of her mouth as she concentrated, adding numbers in her head. She counted twice to be sure. $13.27 dot. It was all the money she had in the world. To her, it was a fortune. It was 100 possibilities. And now, she knew exactly what she wanted to buy with it. The next morning at breakfast, the words were ready. Her mother was making pancakes, and the smell filled the kitchen. Her father was reading the newspaper, his glasses perched on his nose. Lily pushed her food around her plate, her heart beating like a tiny drum in her chest. She knew this was a big ask, a huge one. She took a deep breath. "Mom, Dad," she began, her voice sounding very small in the sunny kitchen. They both looked at her, sensing the importance in her tone. "I need to talk about the dog from the fair. The old one." Her parents exchanged a glance, a silent conversation passing between them. Her father put his paper down slowly. Lily continued, the words tumbling out now that she had started. "I have $13.27 in my piggy bank. My own money. I want to use it to buy that dog from the man who got him. I want to bring him here and give him a home." There was a silence, broken only by the sizzle of the pancake on the griddle. Her mother turned the stove off and came to sit at the table. "Oh, sweetie," her mother said softly, her face full of worry and love. "That's a very kind thought. But a dog, especially an older dog, it's a big, big responsibility." Her father nodded, leaning forward. He wanted to be gentle, but he also needed her to understand the real world. "Lily, listen. That dog is 12. That's very old for a dog. He might not be with us for very long. And vet visits for older animals can be expensive medicine, special food. It's not just the $1, honey. It's a lot more." Lily listened. She saw the concern on their faces. But the picture in her mind of the dog's slow, defeated walk was stronger than her fear. "I know," she said, her voice growing firmer. "I've thought about it. All night, I thought. I'll use my allowance for his food. I'll do extra chores. I'll take out the trash without being asked. I'll weed the whole garden. I'll read to him, and I'll walk him, and I'll make sure he has water." Her eyes were bright and serious. "I promise." He looked so lonely. And everyone just let him go. "We can't just let him go." Her father rubbed his forehead. "The neighbor might not even want to sell him, Lily. He just bought him." "Then I'll ask," Lily said, as if it was the simplest thing in the world. "I'll ask him nicely. I'll tell him I'll love him." Her parents were stuck. They saw the practical wall of problems. The cost, the potential heartbreak of losing a pet soon, the work. But standing in front of them was their daughter, not pleading, but stating a deep truth. This wasn't a whim for a new toy. This was a mission. Her kindness wasn't just a soft feeling. It had become a hard, unbreakable will. Her father looked into her eyes and saw the same unwavering look she'd had at the fair. He saw that this was teaching her something one way or another. If they said no, it would teach her that some wrongs are too big to fix, that compassion has limits. If they said yes, it would be hard, but it would teach her about love, responsibility, and seeing value where others don't. He let out a long breath and looked at his wife. Her mother gave a small, slow nod. She saw it too. "Okay," her father said, the word feeling huge in the quiet kitchen. "We'll drive over there after breakfast. We'll ask. Just ask. No promises, understand? And you have to do the talking." Lily's face transformed. It wasn't just a smile. It was a sunrise of pure, radiant hope. She jumped up and threw her arms around her father's neck. "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you," she whispered. She ran to her room to gather her treasure. She carefully put all the coins and the smooth dollar bills into a clear plastic sandwich bag. It felt heavy and important in her hands. This was her offer. This was everything she had for a $1 dog who needed to know he was worth more. Much more. The drive to the neighbor's farm felt like the longest ride of Lily's life. The plastic bag of money sat in her lap, a small, heavy weight. She held it with both hands, staring out the window, but not really seeing the fields of corn and soybeans rolling by. Her mind was rehearsing what she would say. Her stomach was a knot of nervous hope. Her father drove in silence, giving her this quiet space. He kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, seeing the serious set of her jaw. He was proud of her, but a part of him still hoped the neighbor would say no, that this difficult chapter would close before it truly began. It was a father's protective instinct. They turned down a gravel lane, dust clouding behind the car. The neighbor's farm wasn't as big as the miller's old place. There was a tidy white house, a red barn that had seen better days, and a few chickens scratching in the dirt. It was quiet, peaceful Dot. As the car crunched to a stop, Lily saw him. The old dog was lying in a patch of sun near the barn door. He wasn't tied up. He just lay there, his head on his paws, watching the chickens with a tired disinterest. He didn't bark at the arriving car. He just lifted his head a little. Seeing him again, outside of the noisy fair, made Lily's heart ache fresh. He looked so out of place. This wasn't his home either. The screen door of the farmhouse squeaked open, and the man who had bid the $1 stepped out. He was an older man with a weathered face and kind eyes, wearing worn denim overalls. He wiped his hands on a cloth and walked toward the car, a look of polite curiosity on his face. He recognized Lily's father with a nod. "Afternoon," the man said, his voice friendly but questioning. "Everything all right?" Lily's father got out, and Lily unbuckled herself, clutching the bag of money tightly. She slid out and stood close to her father's leg, suddenly feeling very small. "We're fine, thanks," her father said, putting a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder. "This is my daughter. She was at the auction yesterday. She saw you buy the miller's old dog." The neighbor's eyes shifted to Lily, softening as he took in her serious, determined face. "Oh, I see," he said. He glanced over at Benny, who had now sat up. "Just couldn't let him go for nothing, you know? Felt wrong. Figured he could at least be a barn dog here, keep the rats down in his old age." He said it kindly, but it was clear the dog was a duty, not a companion. This was Lily's moment. Her father gave her shoulder a small squeeze. She took a tiny step forward, her heart hammering so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. She looked up at tall farmer, then down at the bag in her hands, then back at his face. "Sir," she began, her voice thin but clear in the country quiet. I brought all my money." She held up the clear plastic bag. The coins jingled softly. "It's $13.27. It's from my piggy bank. It's everything I have." The farmer looked confused, then surprised. He bent down a little, bringing himself closer to her level. "What for, young lady?" Lily took a deep breath. "I would like to buy the dog from you, please. I want to give him a home. At my home." The words started to flow faster now, earnest and full of feeling. "I saw him yesterday, and he looked so lonely. And I have a bed he can use, and I'll feed him with my allowance, and I'll brush him and read to him. I promise I'll take very good care of him. I promise." She thrust the bag of money toward him, her small arm trembling slightly. Her eyes were wide, pleading, but also full of a steely resolve. She was making her case, offering everything she owned. The farmer was utterly still. He looked from the bag of coins and crumpled bills in Lily's hand to her earnest, hopeful face, and over to the old dog. He saw the dog looking back, its tail giving the faintest, most uncertain thump in the dirt. He thought about his own words. Asterisk, just couldn't let him go for nothing. Asterisk, this was not nothing. This was a little girl's entire fortune. This was more than money. It was a piece of her heart, held out in a plastic bag. A slow, deep change came over the farmer's weathered face. His eyes grew a little shiny. He looked at Lily's father, who simply nodded, his own throat tight. The farmer understood now. This wasn't a child's passing fancy. This was a mission of mercy. He slowly reached out, but he didn't take the money. Instead, he gently closed Lily's small fingers back around the bag, his own rough hands covering hers for a moment. You put that money back in your piggy bank, you hear? He said, his voice thick with an emotion he couldn't quite name. He cleared his throat. Some things in this world are worth more than $1. And some things? Well, some things are worth more than money altogether. He stood up straight and walked over to where the old dog sat. He untied the simple rope lead from a post. He didn't yank or pull. He just held the end of the rope out toward Lily. He's yours, the farmer said, his voice firm and sure now. You're giving him something I can't. You're giving him a purpose again. And I think he knows it. Lily stood frozen for a second, disbelief and joy crashing over her in a wave. Then she moved. She carefully set the bag of money on the hood of the car and stepped forward, her small hands reaching out. The farmer placed the rough rope into her palms. The old dog, Benny, looked up at her. He sniffed her hand. And then, for the first time since he'd left the miller's farm, his tail gave a real, proper wag. It was slow and stiff, but it was a wag. He leaned his head gently against her leg. Tears spilled freely down Lily's cheeks then, but they were happy tears. She looked up at the farmer, her face glowing. "Thank you," she whispered, the words full of more meaning than any two words could usually hold. The farmer just nodded, wiping his own eye with the back of his hand. "No," he said softly. "Thank you." The transaction was complete. No money had changed hands, but something infinitely more valuable had. A $1 dog had just been purchased with a kindness so pure, it made the very air around them seem to hum with rightness. Lily turned, leading her dog slowly toward the car, toward home, the rope feeling not like a leash, but like a promise finally being kept. The drive home was different. The quiet in the car was a warm, full quiet now, not a nervous one. The old dog sat on the back seat next to Lily. He didn't pace or whine. He just sat, pressed gently against her side, looking out the window as the world passed by. Every so often, Lily would lay a careful hand on his back, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing. It was real. He was here. When they pulled into their own driveway, the dog stepped out slowly, sniffing the air. This was a new place, full of new smells flowers from her mother's garden, the scent of paint from the garage, the ghost of yesterday's barbecue. He looked around, curious but cautious. Lily's mother was waiting at the door. She saw the dog, saw the look of solemn joy on her daughter's face, and her last bit of worry melted away. She came out with a bowl of cool water, setting it on the porch. The dog drank gratefully, his tail giving another one of those slow, thumping wags. The first few days were a learning time for everyone. Lily was true to her word. She used her very first allowance to buy a bag of food, specially made for older dogs. She set up a soft plaid dog bed in the corner of her room, right where the morning sun would hit it. The first night, she thought he might be scared. So she spread an old blanket on the floor, right next to her own bed, and slept there with him. The dog, whose name they learned was Benny, seemed unsure of what to do with all this quiet attention. He was used to barns and open fields, not carpet and gentle voices. But he followed Lily everywhere. From room to room, he would pad softly behind her, his nails clicking on the hardwood floors. He would lie at her feet while she did her homework at the kitchen table, a warm, steady presence. The transformation, as spring turned to summer, was the thing that shocked everyone. It wasn't a big, dramatic change. It was in the small details. The tiredness in Benny's eyes began to lift. It was replaced by a bright, watchful warmth. He started to meet Lily at the school bus stop every afternoon, walking patiently beside her father in the mornings to wait for the yellow bus to return. The neighbors saw it. They saw the old dog, once so defeated, now walking with his head up, a little spring in his step. He gained a little weight, filling out his scruffy coat until it grew soft and shiny again. But the biggest change was in his spirit. He had a job now. His job was Lily. When she sat on the porch swing to read, he would jump up carefully and curl beside her, his head in her lap as her fingers absently stroked his ears. When she practiced her piano, with its clumsy beginner notes, he would lie under the piano bench, his tail swishing in time. He was listening. Lily changed, too. The quiet, thoughtful girl found her voice. She would talk to Benny about everything about the math problem she couldn't solve, about the girl at school who was mean, about her dream of one day being a veterinarian. He would listen, his head cocked, as if every word was important. With him, she was never shy. His love was a blanket of quiet confidence she wore everywhere. One evening, her father found her in the living room. Lily was struggling with a book report. She was frustrated, her brow furrowed. Benny was lying beside her chair. He nudged her hand with his wet nose and then laid his head heavily on her foot, a deep sigh escaping him. Lily looked down, her frustration fading. She smiled, scratched behind his ears, and went back to her work with a calmer mind. Her father watched from the doorway, a lump in his throat. The dog wasn't just a pet. He was a healer. The story, of course, couldn't stay just within their family. Lily's father, so proud, mentioned it to a few people at the town community board meeting. He wasn't bragging. He was just so filled with wonder at what had happened that he had to share it. The story spread. It traveled from neighbor to neighbor, at the local coffee shop, at the hardware store. People who had been at the auction remembered. They remembered the old dog nobody wanted. They remembered the bang of the gavel for $1. And now they saw him, this dignified old gentleman, walking proudly beside a little girl, his coat brushed, his eyes bright. It made them pause. It made them think about what value really means. Benny lived for 3 more years. They were not just 3 extra years. They were 3 years of sunlit naps, of gentle walks, of Christmas mornings with a new chew toy, of quiet afternoons of companionship. He was not an old dog waiting to die. He was a loved friend living fully until the very end. When he passed peacefully one autumn afternoon, curled on his plaid bed in the sun, the whole family felt the loss like a physical ache. But the sadness was clean, without a trace of regret. They had not just given him a home. They had returned his dignity. And he, in turn, had given them a lesson they would never forget. Lily, now older, still keeps his collar on a hook in her room. Sometimes she holds it, feeling the smooth leather. She doesn't just remember a pet. She remembers the moment she saw a wrong in the world and decided, with her whole heart, to try and make it right. She learned that kindness isn't just a feeling. It's an action that can change stories. The $1 dog, spurned by a crowd, ended up being priceless. He became a living reminder for an entire town that worth isn't about being new or useful. It's about being seen, being chosen, and being loved. And the little girl who shocked everyone didn't just save a dog. She showed them all how to see with their hearts.